Welcome to this week's edition of CEO Corner. I'm Otis, Rawl, President and CEO of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and we're happy today to have Molly Spearman with us as the Executive Director of the South Carolina School Administrators Association. So Molly, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us, Otis. We appreciate the support of the business community. We think of you as one of our best partners.
Well, you know, it takes a joint effort to raise a child, and you know, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes business educators and parents. It's all hooked together intrinsically to make it happen. But one of the things we want to talk about today, there's been a lot of discussions around the new standards for evaluating schools and trying to align what South Carolina does with what the federal requirements are. And let's talk about that a little bit, Molly, because South Carolina used to have a four fragmented way of evaluating schools, and what we're talking about now is going to a 3-point standard. Talk a little bit about that and why we're doing it.
Well, as you know, it was very important for us to make these changes. South Carolina led the nation back in 1998 when we adopted the Education Accountability Act. And we really came out 3 or 4 years before the No Child Left Behind legislation. And some of the terminology that we used, proficiency, which to us meant basic, meeting standards, but with the national No Child Left Behind, proficient was really the basic standards. So for many years there was a flawed representation of what South Carolina schools were doing. We were being compared to states unevenly. So the legislature made these changes. We saw things that needed to be improved with the testing system as far as getting the reports back quicker. So it was very important to make the changes that the legislature did. Now we're implementing those and making the decisions. Last month the Education Oversight Committee made a very important decision to be sure that the new MET included basic and proficiency. So yes, more students will be meeting the standards, but some have tried to portray that we've dumbed down. That is absolutely inaccurate. Our academic standards have not changed. The same rigor is there. The PASS test is just as rigorous as PACT. The only change is that there'll be an improved representation of the progress that students are making and that the schools are making, and enable us to compare with other states. So it's a very good change, and we applaud the EOC for the decision they made.
Well, you brought up another issue. South Carolina's gone through a new evaluation system of PASS versus PACT. The benefits of PASS versus PACT. I know one of the things is the information is going to get back to the teachers quickly for evaluation, but what else is in your mind?
Well, that's the most important. I think that teachers will get more information back quicker. There was some tweaking to how that would be turned around. So that's probably the most important information that will happen. As far as have the standards changed, is PASS an easier test? Absolutely not. So it was the main goal was to make the information, get it back quicker so that teachers and schools could use that for the next year's placement of students and for any remediation help that might need to go to those schools.
Well, you know, it's interesting. There's so much data out there on education that when you start looking at comparing apples to apples, it's awful tough. And you know, we read a lot about in South Carolina, all the media on the blogs and all, how South Carolina's performing. And I know, at least from where we're sitting, the education system in South Carolina's made some dramatic improvements just since 1996 with graduation rates. And you know, you see different rates going from 61% to 75%, but it looks like the number of 75% is going to be more closely aligned to what could be reported at the national level. So it's nice to know that South Carolina is moving there.
We're doing well. We've got room for improvement, but yes, you're right. Governor Sanford is among the other governors who have agreed to use this new calculation. Now, people need to remember that there are two different things here we're talking about. Graduation rates, that's how many students started in 9th grade and 4 years later graduated on time. And with that, we're at about 75%, which is good. We need improvement, but it's certainly not the half that people like to talk about. The dropout rate is then students who never finish. And we have programs to work with those students. And those programs don't take, when you see the numbers, they don't take into account the students who finish through the adult ed program or who've gotten their GED. So yes, there's some folks who like to use those negative numbers on us, but the truth is that we're at about 75%, about 76% of citizens in South Carolina have a high school diploma.
Right.
We need to improve that, but it's certainly not half, as some would like to portray.
Well, I know another success story that South Carolina's had is the number of nationally board certified teachers we got, and I think we're at least in the top 10 in the nation with the number of nationally board certified teachers. I know that y'all are talking about expanding that program to principals and all too, so a lot of neat things happening there.
That's right. Of course, we know that a quality teacher in every classroom is the most important thing, but very close to that is that there's an outstanding leader, and all the business community people understand that you've got to have a great leader at the helm. You're not going to find a great school without a great principal. So yes, very soon in the next year we anticipate that the new National Board for Principal Certification will be coming out. This is something that we hope the business community will work with us on, that we'll put a real emphasis on that in South Carolina, and perhaps give a stipend for those folks who achieve that certification. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, I know that at least from a business community standpoint too, there are a lot of folks are looking for second careers after they get out of the business community, and a lot of them have degrees in areas where we need those type of degrees in the classrooms, like biology and chemistry and math and those types of things. And it's always been kind of hard for those folks to go back, go through the PACE program so they can get into classroom. I think you're also talking about a new way for these folks to get in the classroom too.
Dr. Jim Rex and the folks over at the department are being very innovative, and I understand that they're taking a new type of certification to the State Board of Education, and will be going to the legislature for approval on this regulation, where we would have an adjunct teacher certification. This would be for people you just described who have a degree in an area, or either who have been very successful in an area, who could teach part-time. Not a full-time certification, but if they wanted a retired chemist from the Savannah River plant wanted to teach a class at Aiken High School, they could be certified to do that. So we would be the first state in the country to have such an advantage, and I think it's the right thing to do. In fact, I'm sort of looking forward to it. I might want to go back and do some teaching, or my husband, who's a civil engineer, in our retirement in our community there in Saluda, to teach. So it's the right way to go, and we're very excited about it.
Well, one of the things we probably should have talked about a little bit about talking about nationally board certified teachers. We had some great news in South Carolina not too long ago about one of our teachers.
Right, and it's fantastic when you see somebody who's done such a great job. Lucy Beckham, who is the principal of Wando High School down in Charleston, and who's probably the poster child for the Chamber because of her outstanding EEDA record and her High Schools at Work program at Wando High School. Lucy was our state secondary high school principal of the year, and she went on and she wowed them in Washington, D.C. during the competition, and about 2 weeks ago was named the National Secondary Principal of the Year. She had a chance to talk about Wando High School and EEDA before Congress, before Secretary Arnie Duncan at the banquet on Friday night, and told stories of students there, how that has impacted that high school. The largest high school in South Carolina, 3,300 students, but yet it's personalized. Kids get a rigorous curriculum, but it's personalized for their strengths, and they're working in their cluster, in their major. So she's an outstanding representative and has really made us proud. And there are lots of other great principals out there, just like Lucy Beckham, just the unsung heroes here in South Carolina.
Well, Molly, thank you for being with us today. We thank you for being a partner with the Chamber and the business community on the education issues. We appreciate that working relationship, and maybe before too awfully long we'll have you back and we'll talk about Act 388 and the impact that it's having on the education system and the business community, and as we develop a proposal to take before the General Assembly.
Thank you, Otis.
Thank you for joining us today on CEO Corner, and next week we'll have another guest to talk about those issues affecting the business community.